Good morning, my name is Kirsty Dignam and I'm here on the 7/7 portal, the 7th of July, to look at the weekly energies with today's Monday's Musings. Let me just turn that light in front of me off, because one, it's reflecting in my vision and blurring it, and also there's more than enough light behind me. Today I've had to really take stock of where I am, to feel into not only the date but the time that I find myself in. When I sensed into what it was I was going to share today, the information that actually came through straight away is it wasn't about what I was going to share, but who I was going to be today, who we are in every waking moment, that conscious choice that is being provided for us all in our reactions. The truth of the matter is I never know where these videos are going to go. I never know the information that's going to come through until I sit down and be with it. And that feels really poignant this week. Today, yes, we are the 7/7 portal. So let's break that down. A portal is when energy is at its peak. Now, portals happen on days because of numerical frequencies and alignments with the stars above us and the planets above us. But they also happen within us when we are at our peak. When we are at our peak depends on how aligned we are. Now, by aligned, I don't just mean aligned to our higher self. I mean how present we are with where we are. How present we are with what is going on, how available emotionally we are to ourselves. So often we live in a world where emotional availability is on the precipice of any change that we long to happen, but it is often portrayed externally. This week, apparently, having sat down with it, we are being encouraged to, I'm just checking my nose, I don't know about you guys, but I've been having a lot of nosebleeds with the higher energies that are coming through. But that also feels quite relevant to check our nose, to check what we know. Our nose is linked to our root chakra, and yes, there is going to be a temptation this week to go off with energies, but they're all going to be relevant provided we can hold space for the higher vision that's trying to come through. And gosh, I'm feeling some heat coming through with that as well, with the changes that are occurring. And the heat is very much like a menopausal heat, which is relevant to myself, but also the energy rising from the earth this week is going to shift through some unnecessary incapacitating blocks that many have been holding on to, which I can relate to. It's not about judgment here. It's not even about feeling into too much of the whys, but recognizing that we are having compassion for that and allowing the energy that is coming in to help us shift through them. We are ready. It may not feel like it because of our perception of ourselves, but we are ready for the changes that are coming. Okay, so back to the nose. The nose is linked to the root chakra. This week it's really, really important to allow what we know to ground us into our body and our situation and our present moment. That is alignment. And from there we will create whatever is necessary to get us to the next stage. I want to say next phase of our own evolution. It felt very important to sit down with the energies today and to recognize the version of ourselves that we are in each moment, that we are choosing to be, and to be very conscious of that, not to be in conflict with that anymore. That is going to be an ongoing practice for us all. With the 7/7 portal, let's go into what that is. Yes, of course, we have those peaks of energy, but acknowledging that when we're aligned, when we're present with whatever is going on, not bypassing it, not trying to fix it, not trying to force change, when we can be with what is going on and aligned with what is going on, we are at the peak of our energy. And what that does is it doesn't force change, it opens space for change. Change is a natural part of evolution. There is no coincidence that as we go into 2026, which I've said before, and actually I feel quite compassionate about the times that we may need to repeat things in order for them to be integrated on different levels this week. As we go into 2026, it is the year of change. It is the energy of change, but it is about remembering what change is and what that means to us, so that we can acknowledge and receive the fullest potential, our fullest potential as facilitators of change. creators of change, bringers of change, by being, ironically, who we've always been, changing our perception of it. This week, that is the invitation. And that is going to come in the form of leaders that didn't recognize they were leaders but have always been doing it. That's going to come in the form of teachers that have been teaching without knowing that's what they were doing, healers that have been healing without the appreciation of what they've actually been doing. So often we can deem success externally by how many likes we have, how much money we make, how seen we are. This week, we're going to be encouraged to really look at what we have been doing behind the scenes, and the scenes being our own limited perspective of ourselves, so that we can really truly see, first and foremost, what we've been part of, but more importantly, who we've always been. And it's going to be things that we have done innately, that have been indigenous to us, that have been part of how we've been raised, or part of how we see the world, or even parts of ourselves we may not have liked. I am very restless. I'm a very restless soul. I'm always flitting from one thing to another. I'm always, even in midwifery, working in the hospital alone was never enough for me. I wanted to work in the community. I wanted to work in theatre. I wanted to do antenatal education. I wanted to be a mentor. I like to expand my own understanding of my own capabilities and myself and the world around me. I've often seen that as boredom, as not being able to ground, as being very wired, out of control, rebellious, sometimes troublemaker, sometimes chaos. As I've got older, more of the energy of the Heyokas or the thunder beings, and doing things differently from my environment has been a trait for me. And I used to think that was because I was just an awkward pain in the arse, but actually today, with the 7/7 portal and with Uranus and Gemini, what I've been encouraged to do is look at what that means in my own birth chart, and it's written in my stars to be that way, to be change within change, to question things, to expand upon things. So I share that because the 7/7 portal, yes, it's a peak of energy. We all have these peaks of energies, these portals within us, from our energy centers and our chakra systems through to the ley lines within our body, and how well we treat our body and align with that and align with our higher self is merely going to increase that potential. The 7/7 portal, however, has been linked throughout time through a lot of shamanic practices to the heavens, through Egyptian times to the Syrian gateway, which is linked to Isis and also Anubis. The 7/7 portal is very much linked to change and transformation as we prepare halfway through the year to go into what will be 12 months at least of change and transformation, but also the same time that Uranus is moving into Gemini. Uranus is the revolution. It is the planet of, I don't want to say discord, but the planet of encouragement to look at how we do things and whether or not it's still working. Yes, you're going to see throughout social media a lot of relatable, truthful scenarios that have happened with Uranus entering Gemini, such as civil war and the World War. I can't remember what one it was, 1943. There will be war, there will be changes and things like that. You're going to see that rise in social media and awareness of that. However, as always, as has always been, whatever I provide, the emphasis for me to share with you guys this week, alongside the energy and how to best navigate it, is the energy and how to best navigate it. It's about bringing it back to the self and acknowledging what change means to us and how open we are to change. What rebellions need to occur within us in order for us to be prepared for anything that comes along, because all the time we can be aligned with ourselves and who we are. That is going to be more easy. It's going to be a foundational pivotal point of next year. Can't even get the words out, which is a classic. So as we go with Uranus into Gemini, yes, it's about communication, giving ourselves time to really listen to what we are saying about ourselves, about the world we live in, about the people we want to be, being honest with any gaps we may find in that, You know, it's one thing to want to run a London marathon or whatever marathon, but if you're not training, that's a gap that needs to be bridged. The last week or so, I've put on my Jacana necklace. I've taken off the 2 roads symbol that I had and the aventurine crystal that I used to wear, and I've decided to start wearing my Jacana necklace, which is a bridge, and that feels really as though it needs to be highlighted this week, that we are the bridges of change, but to really focus on our own life with that as well. Where do we need to make a path from where we are to where we would like to be? One of the things that's been coming up in my own understanding over the last few months actually is the conflict that many feel with their own consciousness, the conflict that many feel with their own visions, whether that's for their family, for their self, for their health, for the world that they long to live in, for relationships, the internal conflict that they feel with themselves in regards to that. This week, that's going to cause a increase of mental inspiration. Yes, it's mental energy, but I want to call it mental inspiration because we can either work with our thought processes or we can be enslaved by them. We can either question our questions and feel our emotions and make physical actions with our body or fight ourselves every step of the way. When we're thinking about Uranus in Gemini, it's really, really important to acknowledge what that means to us. So by all means, look up your birth chart and look where Gemini is, look where Uranus is. My own, I have Mars in Gemini and Uranus in Scorpio. So change within change, transformation within transformation. Yeah, you know, and that conflict of how I may feel about that. Really acknowledging what it is we have been controlling in our own life, who we have been controlling in who we are in our own life, and how willing we are to allow that side of ourselves to come forth and be part of the change because it's necessary. An example, this morning my body was buzzing, really buzzing and really quite intense. And we live in a world where, rightfully so, on occasions we're encouraged to calm down, we're encouraged to reset our nervous system. That often comes with placation or silencing or based on views and judgments of what a reset nervous system looks like. So with Uranus being linked to our nervous system and to our energy and our static and our electricity within our body, what does it mean to reset our nervous system? What does it mean to be with our power, to be in our power, to fully feel our power, not to be controlled by it, but also not to control it this week? Because our energy is the bridge between ourselves and our environment, ourselves and our higher self, ourselves and our guides, ourselves and our visions. Our energy is our portal. How do we feel about that? How do we feel about the vibration that we maintain? Particularly if it's different from the environment we find ourselves in or different from the things that we're trying to achieve. Is there anything else on that? The cards that I'm going to use. I was drawn to use the ones that I'm actually partaking in at the moment on a whim, quote unquote whim, quote unquote whim, if there is any such thing. A few days ago, out of the blue, I've decided to travel with the tarot, which means that the Spellcaster's Tarot I normally use, I have the Emperor card, ironically, with Uranus in Gemini on the 7/7 portal. I'm journeying with the tarot and happen to have landed on the Emperor on the same day, which, yes, okay, it's Aries energy, but it's the thunderbolts, it's Zeus, it's Heoka, it's change type energy, it's intense energy. So recognizing things may have felt as if they were purely coincidental. However, the timing has been perfectly aligned. One of the things with Uranus created in the myths, created alongside the earth, but restricted the children that they created, the titans that they created, everything that they created together. Uranus decided to restrict and control. And as a result, Cronus, actually, the lord of time, Saturn, decided to rebel against Uranus and killed Uranus, his father. So what are we talking about here? This new emergence of our actions, our masculine, our way of thinking, our way of communicating, our way of understanding, rebelling against old systems that have repressed who we are. So I'm working obviously with the Emperor card, which is the Heyoka type energy, which is that intense thunderbolt of the tower type change, but not in a destructive fashion, in a necessary. The communication that I'm getting is tearing down of old systems within us. So watching our nervous system, watching our physical body, ensuring that we get what we need to integrate not only the shifts that have occurred, but to prepare us for those that are to come, recognizing ourselves and our bodies as the foundation of that. Knowing, that's what I was going to say, pausing, knowing that everything happens in divine timing, like myself working with the Emperor card and discovering my own astrology on this day of all days has been a real lightning bolt moment. But Cronus, the Lord of Time, knowing that these things are ready to happen, ensuring that knows that recognition helps ground us into where we are, who we are, so that we can ensure we are more than capable for whatever shifts are about to come in as a result. So the deck that I'm going to use, we're 16 minutes in, the deck that I'm going to use, can't use the one that I'm already using because it feels a little bit like ideas, inspirations, visions, manifestations that we've put out there. They're already doing their thing. Okay, so there's already energies being worked with in the background with some of the things that we're trying to change and to shift here, and to acknowledge that if we start interfering with them and bringing them into other parts of our life or other parts of yes, timelines, but other parts of our own understanding, then it's going to interfere with things that need to play their self out. So the deck that I'm going to use, I've decided, is to go straight back to the Radiant Rider-Waite. Why? They're light. I can fit them in my hand. I can cope with them. They're manageable. I'm not taking on more than is relevant or needed, and that feels really, really important this week. Why do we seek out the information about ourselves? Well, one, so we can see how far we've come and what we understand about who we are, but also so that it becomes relevant to who we are and we don't overstimulate our nervous system. We don't overstimulate our brain. We don't overstimulate and cause changes that we're not quite ready for. We understand ourselves, we understand our potential, and from there we can understand what we can create based on that. We get alignment. We get portals of our own possibilities. We're at the peak of our energy in that moment. So it feels really, really important not to take on more than we need this week, not to take on more than is relevant this week, to travel light. That's the other reason I'm using this deck, is they fit nice and neatly in my hand. I can take them anywhere with me. Focusing on knowledge that you can apply to any part of your life. When we think about teaching, there's this very restricted view that teaching occurs only in classrooms. How many mothers teach their children to walk? How many mentors teach people how to do the job that they're doing? How many animals teach us how to connect to our emotions? Teaching is so vast. When we think about healing, how many times is it linked to fixing or changing or to being in a certain relaxed environment? How often do we heal by facing things that we feared? How often do we heal by turning off the telly that we don't want to look at, or by removing ourselves from a situation, or by looking up our birth chart and realizing, actually, this is who we've been all along? This week, acknowledging that there are easier, more aligned ways of discovering who we are, and it doesn't always involve taking on more, but becoming less inclined to do so. by coming back within. So the deck that I'm using, yes, they fit into a tin. Yes, they're easy to travel. They're light. They're not unnecessarily portrayed. They're very simple. They're black and white, which is kind of what the tarot is, which is kind of what life can be like sometimes, and acknowledging the peace that we find in that as well. Sometimes we really overcomplicate as a species what something is based on our perception or judgments of how it should be. Especially with this trippy energy, it's going to be important that we keep it relevant and up to date with what is going on. So with that in mind, the last reason that I'm going to use this deck is they were one of the originals. They're something that I originally learned from as well, and they're a foundation, a solid foundation, linked to every other version of them out there. So okay, now I see the timelines, and I see ourselves with many versions of ourselves out there. We all wear hats, right? We all do things for a certain job or a certain person, or we all behave a certain way when we need to be. So the original invitation with this video was to recognize who we want to be for that day. We're all different things to different people. However, underneath them all is a version of ourselves, an energy of ourselves that is innate to our soul. This week, we're going to be shown where we may not be in alignment with that, and where we are and believe that we weren't. And from that, big changes and shifts are going to happen in how we communicate with ourselves and our body and our path and those around us. So yes, a big week, a big week that always comes back to the self. So energies this week and how to best navigate them. Go on the ride, enjoy the discoveries, complete the circle. Because change has a circle. Complete the circle. Acknowledge where you are in your own medicine wheel, in your own process, in your own cycle, but complete the cycle. Look at what's in front of you. Absolutely. I'm doing that now. My pictures have gone up in my room. So in front of me, I have two glorious paintings by Jane Delaford Taylor. And one is called Abundance, and the hummingbird and butterflies. You know, that transformation, abundance is that transformation of beauty in the unknown. The sweetness of life, experience life. So often we seek information because we want to be prepared for everything. And, you know, yes, of course, the page of wands underneath, yes, of course, there has been times with this placement in the astrology that has been linked to wars. And when there's change, there's always conflict. That of course is a potential. However, looking at the information we are seeking preparation from, looking at the patterns that have become our foundation, going beyond the knee-jerk reaction and allowing our feelings, our understanding, our connections to expand this week, pausing to look at the vastness and potential of what change actually is. You know, if we speak of this placement or any placement, any energies that have happened before, our own included, from the perspective of the past, nothing shifts. If we're always going to see Uranus in Gemini as potential war because it has been before, then the whole emphasis of Uranus being a revolution, a change bringer, is so restricted. Energies this week and how to best navigate them. The other picture that I have in front of me is a picture of Mary Magdalene, and she's holding a rose to her chest almost as a brooch. And again, there's that emphasis there of beauty, allowing things to unfold, allowing the feminine energy, the wisdom, the intuitive insights to, I want to say, be reborn. And Ten of Cups, be reborn. And on this picture in front of me, this beautiful painting in front of me, I'm seeing the stars, not forgetting that the 7/7 portal as well. You know, Venus and Isis are very much at play in this astrological alignment. Not forgetting the 7-7 portal is also linked to Isis, who is rebirth, renewal, regeneration, but also the great mother, forgiveness, beauty, Ishtar, Inanna, the descent and the restoring of beauty from that descent, the wisdom that is gained. Yes, this placement can be linked to conflict and chaos if we fight changes that need to occur, our own included. Yes, of course, it can be linked to destruction and revolution. But within all change, there is wisdom. What have we learned this week? What have we learned? What are we choosing to take forward? Only then, only by acknowledging where we are, not the communication that we've had in the past, not what has happened before, but where we are now, and aligning with that, can we truly see the beauty of what has happened unfold, ourselves included. 10 of Cups, right? So energies this week and how to best navigate them. There's going to be a lot coming back together, scattered parts of ourselves coming back together. There may very well be moments, aha moments with ourselves, where we realize who we are and what we offer. And with that, of course, there may come grief of time that we haven't been authentic to ourselves. And again, it's up to us what we decide to focus on. I can feel in myself there being we may feel torn between how we've been, how we believe we need to be, and how we actually are. And I can feel that. So finding the middle ground between the two, it's not about, I mean, it may be for you, but it doesn't have to be about life-changing shifts. You know, this move with Uranus and Gemini is for 7 years. We may not even notice it for a while. Yes, of course, we may notice big changes initially as a knee-jerk reaction, and we may feel as if that's how things will play themselves out. However, recognizing true change is often long-term. Okay, it's not the swift destructive moments are initiators of a much greater, vaster shift that needs to occur. You know, I do think this placement is going back retrograde actually around about November time, or until November time. Don't quote me on that, I'm not an astrologist, but it feels as if in my core we're going to be given time after this initial bolt to get used to some of the changes that are happening, and from there to really recognize what it's been about all along, and to be given that time to integrate and realign with the information that comes through as a result. 6 of Cups. Okay, so I almost want to shrug over this 6 of Cups energy in front of me because it feels as if I'm going backwards, and that is the 6, right? Sometimes we go backwards in order to restore that harmony. Sometimes it is about focusing on what we have gained, particularly in our childhood. So there's a lot of wisdom, untapped wisdom in our childhood that has been seen as wounds or things to heal or placate or silence, and actually there's a lot of inner wild wisdom that will be coming forward in the next 7 years at least to help us navigate some of these shifts and changes, and may actually be the biggest adaptation that needs to occur by embracing that youthful view of life, that innocence, that belief, that hope and trust and charity and community. All of these things, I feel myself come back to the 80s, almost coming full circle. But there is a collective rush over that. There is a collective almost yearning to shift past that, to, in this deck in particular, not take time to smell the roses, to not live life. Again, acknowledging when we seek information, particularly externally, we are losing out on so much internal experience. Okay, I will get to energies this week. Going with the flow, going with the wisdom as it wants to come through this week. There may not be the structure that we would like. You know, I talk about weekly energies, but of course it all depends what we do in each moment. So this could be the energies this week, but it may go on all year. So acknowledging that, and acknowledging when you're watching this video, it will be relevant for you at that time. When we receive things, it is exactly as when we were able to do so. Energies this week and how to best navigate them. Right, 6 of Pentacles. There does need to be balance there, however. Otherwise, we may very much get caught in the communication of spirit and way out there energies and not actually doing anything with it. So, okay, I've discovered this. What am I going to do about it, if anything? That balance really needs to be there within us. Okay, so yeah, that justice almost needs to be within us. It's one thing to search all of these energies, but what are you going to do about it? What does that actually mean to you? So for me, with the Uranus and Scorpio, and with my birth chart energy, recognizing, yeah, pretty much on paper, I'm born for these times, like us all. It wasn't something I didn't already know, but allowing that to integrate so that when I get those moments of feeling restless, I know actually it's my soul saying, right, you need to expand here. Okay, so what are you going to do with the information that you've gained this week? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. There's still some really I don't want to say outdated beliefs, but deeply embedded beliefs and patterns from the past within us. So I see death in the middle of the pack, and immediately my own body starts to question, what does that mean? Da, 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 da. Now, even though I know that death in the tarot doesn't mean always death in the tarot, because of my past, that is there in my awareness. So it's not to say that it's not real. Acknowledging our awareness, acknowledging what may be in it, and acknowledging why that may be in that, so that we can then acknowledge what we need in those moments of fear of change. There's a lot of fear of change here as well. Overall, we have the Nine of Pentacles, and it feels important to look at the energies overall, whether that's a vision that we have, whether that's something we're trying to achieve, whether that's this week's readings, to really look into the overall view that is going on. What is it we are trying to achieve here? Well, it's the Nine of Pentacles. It is that abundance card. So I said it last week. What is abundance to you? It's going to be one of the biggest themes as we go into the latter part of this year. What does it mean to live a rich, fulfilling life for you? And there's no judgment and no set ways. There's a place for everybody. For some, again, it's money. For some, it's family. For some, it's community. For some, it's purpose. For some, it's all. For some, it's none. Figuring out what it is that brings beauty to your life this week. Yes, I get bored. I want to experience so many different things in life. That brings abundance. And yet I know, looking back, there's been so many times I've cut that down and tried to find my quote unquote niche, or limit myself, restrict myself, and make that the reason that I haven't achieved all these things. The reason I haven't is because I haven't allowed that part of me to feel restless and seek new experiences. Whatever your soul is saying to you, whatever you're yearning for this week, allow that communication to occur. Yes, it may bring a bit of a thunderbolt, and it may encourage you to look at areas of your life that need to change in order for that to happen. But the biggest area is listen. The biggest area is accept what you're feeling, accept what is being spoken to you for something from yourself, for something far greater than an inconvenience to a normal standard life, especially if that normal standard life isn't one that you designed in the first place. On the Monday, we have that Ace of Wands. We have that inspiration that comes through from a spiritual level. So for me, very much this morning, it was my birth chart. But we have that Uranus in Gemini. We have that spiritual communication that is saying, wake up. This is what I actually need of my life. This is what I actually want to experience. This is who I am. Acknowledging that what we want to experience is also part of who we are and what we offer. It is the ace, so it's a new beginning here. Don't run before you can walk. Uranus energy is great. Change energy is great, but forced change is not natural change. Obviously, putting your chin down and pushing without contractions is going to cause damage. So ensure that you are aligned with your body. You can hold space for all of these ideas. When we get the ace, we also get the 10 of that energy coming through, so we can see the greater vision, but bring it back to the now. Where am I in relation to that? What do I need to start putting into place? Provided we do that. On the Tuesday, we have the King of Wands. So any actions that we have, particularly from the masculine perspective, so our logical actions, our communicative actions, our driven, ambitious actions from a spiritual perspective are more likely to be divinely led, more likely to be very sovereign to our soul, more likely to be balanced in who we are. That is the opportunity that we're being given this week. This is change. This is what change looks like. Almost given that baton from ancestors to run with it. Run with it. What does this involve in your life? However, the king isn't running yet. The king is sat on his wand. I'm being reminded of a broomstick now. Slowing the energy down on the Tuesday, being aware of all the different inspirations. But the King of Wands is sat on his throne next to a salamander, acknowledging things that may need to shift, change, and be adapted to and with first before these things can come into play. On the Wednesday, that's where we have the first major arcana, which is the Death card. That is going to bring forth changes. That is going to bring forth an energy that is necessary to move through. You know, in the Death card, we have the Bishop in front of death, we have the maiden in front of death, we have the king in front of death, we have children in front of death, we have every energy potentially that could hold us back, that could stop any transformation occurring. I don't have the money, I don't have the faith, I'm too young, I don't have the responsibility, I'm not mature enough, I haven't learned enough, I just want to be free, I just want to play. All those things in front of any changes that need to occur, but embodying the vibration of death, embodying the vibration of change and moving through them, staying focused on what came to you on the Monday, staying focused on what you acknowledged on the Tuesday needed to shift in order to make this vision a potential. Stay focused. Use the energy that you have had before to get you through moments to move forward now. On the Thursday, we have the Two of Cups. There is that union there. And obviously, I say obviously, Uranus in Gemini are very much about communication, very much about unionships, very much about changes and transformations that can occur when people come at things individually but collectively. Community, particularly on the Thursday, there's an opportunity here to rebuild connectivity for the foundation that is needed. I was discussing with a dear friend the other day. I'm not going to get into it too much because I'm going to write about it this week for the blog. But I was discussing with a dear friend yesterday and today with today's daily guidance that as a species, the belief that we have to care for our own needs above and beyond others, whilst paramount in ensuring that we are able to provide space, has become a invitation to separate ourselves from the collective, from the vision, from the community. Many indigenous tribes and many old ways of leadership recognized that if the community was well, they too were well. Thursday, that's going to come to light. Thursday is not about being perfect. It's not about being 100% ready. It's about knowing that some of our readiness comes from relationships. Some of our readiness comes from what we receive from others also. Ensuring that we have that flow. The only way to do that is to connect to what we need, who we want to relate to, the information we actually want, and being responsible for that. This morning, I could have quite easily ended up down the rabbit hole of Uranus and Gemini leading to wars. And I'm not saying that it's not, but I'm not saying that it is either. I'm saying there are many, many different forms of information out there. And it's really, really important to take responsibility, not only to acknowledge the information we're connecting to, but the very reason why. What story within us are we in union with? What story within us are we in conflict with? For a long time, it has been easier for me to see myself as a troublemaker because I would have to acknowledge the responsibility that comes with recognizing there are times when I'm a leader. You know, there are times when that revolution is necessary, definitely in my own life. So on the Thursday in particular, looking at what energy you're uniting with and why. What is your gain behind it? On the Friday, we have the second major arcana, which is the Hanged Man. Of course, with that comes a completely different perspective. And this is where I'm getting really tempted. I can feel my own, and it is my ego, I can feel it. My own ego, not that there's anything against ego, but my own ego wanting to go into the bigger collective things that are going to be happening on the Friday in regards to how we see the world, and in particular scapegoats, in particular sacrificial energy, in particular this has brought forth change. This was the change that we needed out there. So I'm aware of that, and actually I'm going to use the energy to feel into the invitation here to stop with the Hanged Man, to pause, to come back to the heart, which is the Christ consciousness, to not get too caught up in what is obvious in front of us, but to embrace the vibration of Odin, again, the energy behind the Hanged Man, and just close our eyes to what we can see and go into what we can feel on the Friday in particular, because it's that perspective, it's that vision that is needed. There are many times when we get a reaction to something, a glimmer, a trigger, whatever you want to call it, and we automatically, I know I do, automatically assume that that needs fixing. Sit with that on the Friday. Acknowledge whether or not that's a pillar that fortifies you or holds you back. Have accountability and agency for that. If you're not ready to move on from that, fine. Acknowledging that and giving yourself what you may need until you are. And if you are, then taking those steps by looking at how you've been perceiving yourself up until this point. On the Saturday, we then have the Four of Wands. And I feel confusion here because it feels, come the Saturday, that there's some big changes, but how have they been relevant to life? There's been some big shifts, but I thought it would have more of an impact on me and my life. Not everything is about us. Not everything is about the individual. Not everything makes sense straight away. Not everything is going to be clear immediately. Things are changing. Things are shifting. Come back to everyday life of the home. Chop wood, carry water, celebrate where you are, celebrate the life that you live. That is very, very important and can be the biggest change. And I know that can be difficult, particularly in times when people are struggling and the world is so confusing. We can almost feel quite guilty for celebrating what we have and the life that we are blessed to live. However, that can be one of the biggest changes. The more we live in a state of abundance and receptivity and balance and harmony and love, the more those shifts can occur within us and then as a ripple. My sister sent me the most beautiful video today from Pocahontas with the very awful story, Pocahontas. Please, I encourage you to look into the true story of Pocahontas, not the Disney version. But in the Disney version, there's a video of the tree speaking to Pocahontas about always knowing her path and recognizing the ripples and how they start small. Now, this is not something that we don't know, and yet we long for a world to be abundant and do the opposite. As a species, we long for a world to be happy and joyful, yet often don't express that for whatever reason. So really looking this week, particularly come the Saturday, where we're not in harmony with what abundance means to us, where we haven't allowed that in our lives for whatever reason, and allowing that ripple effect just to happen. You know, you walk along the street, someone smiles at you, chances are it's going to make you smile also. Not always, but chances are it is. So celebrate you, celebrate the changes, celebrate everything that you have achieved, celebrate this new perspective of yourself that wants to come through at a place where you are able to receive it, particularly on the Saturday, because on the Sunday we then have the third and final major arcana, which is justice, harmony, balance. I want to say the world rights, you know, the amount of times I get together with friends and family, and I always say, oh, we're just putting the world to rights. Having those conversations, having those debates with yourself and with your loved ones, and the vision itself that you have for the world. Where are you? What do you need to bring in? Is it still applicable? Is it still what you want? Is it relevant to you know, a lot of the times we create things or try to manifest things so that we learn from the experience about ourselves and about our ability as creators. So we may find come the Sunday that something we once wanted is no longer relevant. Hold court for that. Witness that. See change. Perceive change. Feel change from within you first. Okay, so 3 major arcanas. I was going to put the Ace of Wands as one of the major arcanas. So anything that happens on the Monday, yes, of course, it does feel like a major inspirational fate that has happened. However, it's an idea. Not letting our ideas dictate everything to us, letting them open us up, letting them gently coerce our own consciousness out of us. We have 3 major arcanas. We have the Death card, the Hanged Man, and Justice. Now, I can be I can see the relevance of this in my own life and my own circumstances at the moment, in particular with a loss that has just occurred, how it needs to be seen from a different perspective and how there are legalities involved in that. So recognizing what is going on and seeing it from the perspective of your own life and then the external. And sharing from there. It's beautiful to share our stories. There's a great power in becoming a storyteller. However, this week we're being encouraged to look at the underlying narrative that we're communicating. So the example, my beautiful, beautiful cousin passed recently, and there is no reason for her passing, no obvious reason. And it is going further to autopsies and postmortems, and there are a lot of legalities being involved and a lot of questions that need answering and a lot of grief that needs support, a lot of trauma that needs to be held space for. However, beyond my cousin, this isn't the first time in our family. So the individuals in my family that are speaking up for this are also speaking up for an injustice that has been ongoing throughout our ancestry. This week, recognizing when something comes up for you, there's a far greater picture behind it as well, particularly in regards to communication and justice, well-being, spiritual energy, vision, what else? Technology, advancements, evolution, change, anything in your life, your ancestry, or the world at large that may need to be shifted, we're going to experience also. Recognizing that and recognizing our role in that is going to add to the collective, not take away from it. And it's our responsibility to ensure that we're part of that. So the 3 major arcanas, the creations, if you will, the shifts, if you will. How many times can I say the word change? We need a new word for it. Life. The life, if you will, comes through the fates. This going to say this year, but this week in particular, with necessary endings that allow us to see things from a different perspective and restore the justice that we've been seeking, be that internally or externally. We then have 3 wand cards. So yes, that's going to have an impact on our spiritual energy. So in regards to anything externally and out of our control, divine timing, however you want to see it, it mirrors what is going on for us spiritually, internally, and our ambitions. So these changes that come through re-inspire us. These ways of seeing things differently help us to recognize our own sovereignty. And this justice that is being restored comes from celebrating what we have achieved, comes from realigning to our pillars of morals, our foundations, our way of living, what we see as a life worth living, what we see as abundant. Yes, the changes externally are going to have an impact, and that impact is going to be on a more spiritual recognition this week. There are things here, things we are here to experience on a soul level. We then have 2 pentacle cards, the 9 of Pentacles and the 6 of Pentacles. 6 of Pentacles was at the bottom of the pack, and underneath it was the Chariot. And I almost want to put that to one side, the 6 of Pentacles, but the Chariot is underneath it. So the way to move forward this week is in how we look at what we share and what we receive. what that means to us, where we may be in conflict with that. Again, one of the conversations I was having with a dear friend was about boundaries, and how boundaries are another word for alignment if we choose them to be, or they can be a word for restriction. That is up to us this week, acknowledging, as my hand is on the Two of Cups, what flow we have united with. How divine is that? How equal is that? How balanced is that? How beautiful is that? How connected is that? So we have the Six of Pentacles and we have the Nine of Pentacles here. Yes, there is an opportunity. And that's all I want to say. There is an opportunity, as there's always an opportunity, whether it's Uranus in Gemini, whether it's the 7-7 portal, whether it's Monday morning, whether we have woken up to yet another day of our lives. There is always an opportunity. What comes of that is what we do with it. Taking responsibility for that this week is one of the biggest things we can do to initiate change in our life. With the Two of Cups, it is about connecting to that strength, that divine timing, knowing that when we're ready, the answers will come, that the relationships will come with ourselves first and foremost, and anything based on it from there is what will help us move forward with the Chariot. Okay, one card this week, 50 minutes, how to best navigate the energies. If we could say one card, one word, one ring to rule it all, complete the cycle. Yours, your ancestors, the vision, the cliche as it sounds, be that change, you know? Okay, so what's preventing that? If we figure out what's preventing the change, we can allow the shift of it to actually happen. 10 of Wands, 10 of Wands. That's interesting. That's my family's surname. 10 of Wands. Lots of ancestral stuff this week. 10 of Wands and the 10 of Pentacles here, either side. So are we going to have a life that is full of abundance that we choose to share, the wisdom of our experiences based on our physical actions? Or are we going to have a life that is spiritually driven and burning us out? There needs to be the balance there of physical and energetic. Our energy is our currency. Our energy is our portal. Our energy in this Page of Swords, and we have the Three of Cups underneath. So our energy is what's going to deliver it, okay? Our energy is our very connection to the source of all things. And underneath it, we have judgment. I want to carry on seeing what's underneath it, but ultimately the only reason we continue to look at what's beneath everything and try and understand it is to acknowledge the judgments we have about ourselves, so that we can bring it back to full acceptance of our energy and who we are. That's what's blocking it. Okay, so one card. Temperance and strength. Chop wood, carry water, be present in this life. Focus on what is in front of you. Know that what moves through you will create the change anyway, and have the strength, patience, and determination to feel what is going on, to connect to that divine feminine wisdom that it is, gender aside, that intuitive, innate vision and voice of your own soul. Take care, and I shall speak to you next week.